Okay, so we are back to talk about part two of Bridgerton season three. This is by no means my comprehensive analysis or review. I'm gonna make a million more videos on this, but there were enough people that were asking my thoughts that I was like, okay, I'll just do another first thoughts, initial first impressions type of video to just share kind of casually my thoughts and the things that are at top of mind for me. I still have my episode 4 recap coming. I still have my reaction to episode 5 coming, and then I'm gonna do a recap for all the other episodes, not to mention my Claude character analysis, my Paula relationship in season 3 analysis, among many others. So don't worry, you will be fed. You will be fed. But as of right now, before I made any content either talking about part 1 or part 2, I just felt like it was appropriate to do a general kind of informal discussion about my thoughts of part 2 so that people can have that prior to really diving into it. So that's what we're going to do today. Did I buy another corset for my coverage of Bridgerton? Yes. Is it a sleigh? As always, I'll leave it up to you to decide. We have a lot to talk about, for sure. I posted a short saying wowza, and that is wowza in a lot of different ways. That is a versatile wowza. There were a lot of things that I loved. There were a lot of things that I was not happy about. A lot of things that I would have done. Like, I was like, oh, I wrote this. And a lot of things that I was like, okay. So overall, this seems to be an unpopular opinion yet again. I lived. I'm sorry I loved it. It might be because I went in with such like low expectations. Like my expectations were literally on the ground. So everything that happened, I was just pleasantly surprised because I wasn't expecting anything. It might be that, but I lived. I gagged. Like, I loved almost everything about it. Were there certain things that I didn't like? Absolutely. Were there things that could have been done better? Yes. Are there things I disagree with? Yes. But overall, I think this is a really impressive feat. They pulled off a lot in a really short amount of time. And I think did justice to the majority of the storylines and characters, which is really difficult to do. So I commend them for that. I do kind of live. I did kind of love it. Like, what can I say? I was really surprised. Like, I really couldn't believe my eyes at some of the things that were happening. I was like, oh, they're doing this. Oh, they're getting into it. And I was really expecting the worst. I really thought that they were not going to have Colin and Penn do any kind of angst or any kind of fighting or anything like that. So I was pleasantly surprised when I saw that they did have a good amount of angst and fighting, and that Colin got to be angry and that they got to express grievances back and forth. Would I have done more? Absolutely. But I really thought with the amount of time that they had left, they weren't going to do any of that. It was just going to be like oh, sweep it all under the rug. It's all okay. It's fine. And they didn't do that. They didn't take the easy route with that. And that's another thing about this season that I really admired. There's a lot of times where they just didn't take the easy route. There's a lot of really easy decisions that they could have made writing-wise that are pretty lazy, but that could have worked. And they really didn't. So that was pretty surprising and impressive to me that they really kind of took the more complex approach a lot of the time. So first off, there's a lot to talk about as far as the Whistledown plot goes, because there's like a million people involved in that, and it connects to other storylines and other characters and other relationships. But as far as the Penn's identity as Lady Whistledown goes, I think they did that really, really well. I think they did it better than the book. I think they adapted a lot of it really, really masterfully, and it was very concise and clear, the points that they were making, which is especially impressive because I don't think that they did that great of a job in seasons 1 and 2 setting up a dual identity for Penn and Lady Whistledown. They felt very separate, at least to me personally. They felt very separate. It was hard for me to even reconcile the fact that it was the same person. But it's important if she's going to continue to do Lady Whistledown, which she is, obviously, and if the conflict is going to be between choosing basically love and career, which is what they ended up winding it down as, it's important that people do understand and do see that this is Penn, that it is one voice, that it is her voice. So I thought they did a really good job of honestly introducing all of these elements and getting the audience used to it. Like, it made a lot of sense. And using Portia and Eloise to do that, Portia coming in being like, ladies don't have dreams, they have husbands, that, I was like, great. Okay, very clearly I see what they're going for. Like, that was very clear to me. I was like, oh, period, absolutely, absolutely. Because what they're essentially saying is, like, you should give up your dream because now you have this love. You have your husband, you have your love. This is all you've ever wanted, right? Like, so that you should be happy. And that's kind of Eloise's sentiment. She was like, you've been obsessed with this, like, let it go. You can't be a Bridgerton and Lady Whistledown. You have to choose between the two. And so I thought that that kind of dilemma between choosing between love and career, and you can't have both, and you can't be both, all of that was very interesting. And it also brings up themes of exploration about, like, who and how you are in a relationship, and like if you have to change who you are and what you love to do in order to be in a relationship, then is that the right relationship? Is that a good or healthy relationship? Does that person really love you? You know, it brings up all these types of issues around that I think are really complicated. And I felt like they touched on a lot of different things really well, really quickly too, which is really impressive. I also think that they did a good job of weaving Penelope's character arc and maturing into this, because they made the distinction between this being just gossip, as Eloise referred to it, versus something that Penelope is really good at, that she has a talent for, that people want. This is in high demand. They did a really good job of continuously illustrating and then juxtaposing that with Cressida's issue, that this isn't the type of thing that everybody can do. This is difficult. This is a lot of hard work. This has taken her a lot of time. Like, this is a skill. This is a feat. This is impressive. Whereas, like, so much ire is directed towards it, rightfully so. I'm not saying that that's wrong, but rightfully so, a lot of ire is directed towards it, that people don't really come to appreciate what it is that's actually being done. And Colin, as Colin said, he pointed out, he's like, these people pay week after week to hear themselves maybe insulted. You know what I mean? Like, that's impressive. To have that much of a voice and that much intrigue and power, as again, Penn said, Whistledown is power, is really something that's a big deal. And so it's not just silly gossip. It's also Penn recognizing that before she wasn't really using this power that wisely. You know, she could have been gearing it towards more productive things, that she could have been helping other people, that she could have been doing a lot more with this power and this influence and this attention that she had as Whistledown. But she was a teenager. You know what I mean? Like, that, I think they did a good job of showing that she feels bad about the things that she's done in seasons 1 and 2. And she wishes that it was different, and she wishes she didn't do it. And she really hasn't done it this season. Eloise says, you know, her column has been different. She really hasn't been going that hard on anyone. Even the Queen says it. She's like, oh, she's not, you know, she's not going in on anybody. So I think that's an interesting distinction to make, that, like, you can look at Whistledown as an entirely negative thing. There's a lot of really positive elements to it, and a lot that's very true to Penelope and who she is and her identity. And as long as you have Penelope realizing her past mistakes and then rectifying it, then you can move forward from there. So I think they did a good job with all of that. Also putting more insight into why she started the column in the first place, talking about, you know, feeling powerless, feeling invisible. Colin makes some references to that. And Eloise, she says, I almost see why someone might be driven to do that. There's just a lot that they really kind of expanded on, where they really merged the two identities and made it make sense for them to be the same person, and had a lot of people talking about it in ways that they never have before. And I just loved it. I just thought it was really good. I was like, ooh, yes. Like, I understood what they were going for. I agreed with it. And having this growth and development really puts her in a difficult spot, because it's like, what she's being told is that you should give up this thing that you're really good at and you've worked really hard for in order to have love. And while that might be valid in some ways, when you think about the fact that, like, she's done a lot of damage as Whistledown, there's also a lot of ways that she could do good, and a lot of ways that she has done good, and a lot of things that, you know, she should be proud of from that. So that's an interesting kind of, like, dilemma to be dealing with both sides of that. And as Colin says, she's always had one voice. Like, this has been her. She has been observant. She has been witty. She has been sharp and cutting and biting. She's just expressed herself more accurately in print, and she hasn't wielded that power responsibly, I think, as Pin says herself. And she is resolved to do so in the future. So that kind of, I just feel like it was really good. It addressed, like, so many issues that a lot of people had with these storylines not making sense, being incongruous, people disliking Penn for the things she's done in Whistledown. It all kind of wrapped it up in a way that made a lot of sense, and really forged a way forward for Lady Whistledown to continue, obviously in a different way and by her name being revealed. But I just didn't see a world, especially since they had written themselves into such a corner with Penn exposing Eloise and Marina. Like, she does a lot more damage in the show than she does in the book. In the book, Lady Whistledown is pretty harmless. She really doesn't do much damage at all to anyone, let alone the Bridgertons themselves. So I thought they had written themselves into a corner, and I was like, there's no way that they could continue Whistledown. I just did not see a world in which they could. But I think that the way that they did it makes sense, and it works, ultimately. I also like that they acknowledged that she got addicted to the power of it, and the infamy and the intrigue of that, and it's easy for you to get, you know what I mean? Like, the emotional landscape of Penelope throughout becoming Lady Whistledown, why she started it, what she gained from it, you know, the negative elements of, like, starting to get cocky, or maybe not really thinking through her actions as much, or being misguided. All of that, I think they really did a good job of, like, psychoanalyzing all the steps that she made throughout the first 2 seasons. I really understand her being like, Cressida taking credit? Out of all the people, the girl who bullied me incessantly and made my life a living hell, I'm gonna let her take credit for my cleverness and my sneakiness and, my talent and my success? No, thank you. I get that, and I think that's a very valid thing. Speaking of Cressida, again, I cannot believe how much they adapted to the book. Like, they did 90% of the book, which is really crazy, but they made it better. Like, they improved upon it. It's really, really impressive, because I thought they would drop so many of these things. They kept Cressida claiming Lady Whistledown, and they kept the blackmail. I thought, surely they're not going to do both of those things. I thought maybe one, but not both. And here they are, and it ate, okay? It ate! The way, oh my god. When Cressida, this was such a serve! When Cressida walked in to the string cover of Confident by Demi Lovato, with that fit, with everybody looking, gag of the century. That was so fucking good, dude. That was so good. That's drama. That's intrigue. It worked so well. I got like full body chills. Like, that cover was just so perfect for it. Like, oh my god, it was just so fucking good. It was so good. It was so interesting. It was interesting to see all of the Ton's reactions to Lady Whistledown. They love to hate her. They hate to love her. Some people respected her. Some people thought she was the devil. Like, that was really interesting. It's so dramatic. Her waltzing in there and kind of like holding her head up high to that. Oh my god. And then of course we have the added knowledge that Penn is Whistledown. So then you have that subplot going on where like Penn and Eloise and now Colin, it's like that reaction to that. What does that mean? And I loved that they had her write a Whistledown. That was so good. And when it came in on Cressida's narration, so good. It was so good. And you know what? This is actually something that I had the idea to do. I'm sure I have it written down in my notes somewhere, because I was thinking before season 3 came out, I was like, okay, what ideas would I do? Like, what could I possibly do? This in particular of having someone else write a Whistledown or having battling Whistledowns, rivaling Whistledowns, was something that I had thought of, because I thought that would be a gag. And it was. And I was correct. And so were they in writing this. This was a gag. And then it continues into the next episode where, like, you get the Cressida issue with Cressida's voiceover yet again. And then you get, the real Lady Whistledown, you get Julie Andrews' narration coming in. It's so good. It's such a relief. And it also really engenders people to Lady Whistledown. And so that softens the blow for Penn's reveal, because they're like, oh wait, she actually is a really good writer, especially, she could be a lot worse. You know what I mean? It's like seeing the comparison of that. They're like, actually, Lady Whistledown's kind of a queen. In comparison to Cressida, kind of a queen. And so all of it worked really well. It was just like, it was just so good. It was just so good. Like, how exciting, how tantalizing, how intriguing, how many, oh my god, it was so fucking good. Like, I don't know what to say. It was so good. And this is a great way to really utilize that part of the plot, because if they are going to utilize, like, gossip, scandal mongering, like that type of thing as a narrative device and a plot device, then, like, give it some tea. You know what I mean? Like, give it some intrigue, give it some mystery, give it some stakes where it's like, it actually, separate and aside from the romances that are going on, it actually matters. It actually means something. Like, let's make that super dramatic. And it does make it dramatic knowing who actually is Lady Whistledown and knowing where everybody stands. It was so good. I really love the way that they did that. And I love the justification that they gave for Cressida taking credit in the first place, because it was nebulous in the book. Like, it didn't really make sense. It was just like, oh, she's a bitch, so she takes credit and she wants money. That's pretty much what it was. But in the show, I think it makes a lot more sense, and actually makes me empathize with her a lot more, because I understand why she did it, and I understand why she thought it was a good idea. And on paper, it does seem like it's a good idea. She's needing to get out of this situation. And the way that everybody's talking, it's like, oh, this might be the perfect out. Of course, it blows up in her face, ultimately, but, like, I just loved all of the fleshing out that they did of that entire arc, and it was so good. It was so good. It was such a gag. Oh my god, her walking into Confident in that dress with that hair, with the queen watching and everybody like, was that not the gag of the century? That was so fucking good, guys. If you don't think that's good, I don't believe anybody who says they don't think that's good. That is chef's kiss drama. I mean, come on. Also, even before Cressida even got involved, the dramatic tension and buildup of Penelope needing to reveal herself to Colin, Eloise knowing was really great. Her putting that ultimatum on there, it put them on a timetable. It made it really dramatic. It gave it a lot of tension. It gave it a lot of stakes. Like, it was like, we're on the clock. Like, we gotta get this going. She's trying to figure out what to do. It gets worse and worse every single time that someone makes like a, oh, well, we'll dance on the day of her demise. And, oh, she won't be nameless for much longer. Oh, she'll ruin her family and her prospects for marriage. Like, oh my god, all that stuff was just so good because every time I was like, ooh, 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 it just makes it worse and worse and worse and worse. And you understand why Penn is digging herself even deeper into the hole, even though it's like, oh, it would be better to just reveal it. But you understand why she's doing what she's doing, because every single time that someone says something like that, it's like, ooh, yikes, yikes, yikes. It was the way that they executed the whole Lady Whistledown of it all, I thought was really good and really impressive. And they were able to involve the Queen, which I had said also, I was like, maybe they'll do the Queen putting a bounty on Lady Whistledown's head rather than Lady Danbury, which makes sense to me. She's always been involved in the Lady Whistledown plot. That's a good way to add stakes to it. I also liked them having, like, Cressida, the Queen not believing her, and having Cressida need to, like, prove it to her. That was really interesting. I didn't necessarily see that coming, but it makes a lot of sense. Like, I'm like, yeah, well, that makes sense. Especially because the Queen's relationship with Lady Whistledown is more of like a fascination than anything else. It's not really a hatred. It's a little bit of a rivalry, but she kind of lives for Lady Whistledown. She kind of lives for having her as an opponent. So it checks out that she knows her that well and that she's not going to like let people just take credit. And I think it checks out with the way that they've written her rivalry. It's like a frenemy situation. Like that whole relationship between her and the Queen, it makes sense to me that at the end, she kind of is living for the fact that it's Penn. She's like, oh, she's impressed. It makes sense to me. Now I'll go to Canthony. Now, do I want more of them? Always. Was there enough of them for my liking? No. Was I, regardless, pleasantly surprised? Absolutely. I cannot believe, again, my expectations were literally in the gutter, guys. Like, after season 2, I was like, So, again, it could be shading my perspective there, but oh my god, I was genuinely moved by part 2 Canthony. Like, so superior. It's not even funny. And this started from episode 5, and I couldn't believe my eyes. I think I cried multiple times over them too, because I felt such a relief. This might sound ridiculous when I'm explaining it. I hope people understand what I mean, but I had kind of, as much as I love to see Kate and Anthony in episode 1, in part 1, I was kind of like not feeling that much. I wasn't being provoked in any way. Like, I was like, oh, love to see them happy, love to see them on my screen, period, they look amazing. But that was pretty much the extent of it. I was like, I didn't feel any development, I didn't feel any type of changes or anything that was really interesting or intriguing to me. It was just like, oh, okay, there they are. And I love to see them, don't get me wrong. But I kind of made peace in my own mind where I was like, okay, well, I guess their story has pretty much gone as far as it can go. Not generally speaking, but as far as the writers in the season wanted to take it within the framework of the show. I was like, okay, well, they're not really giving them anything new or letting them develop as characters individually or build upon certain threads that they had started in season. Like, I was just like, okay, they're just there. And while I was, like, devastated at that idea, that I felt like I was kind of, like, saying goodbye to the ship, where I was like, it's just, I mean, I'm never really going to feel the way that I used to feel about them. To be fair, season 2, like, kind of ruined, it's another video, but I just had kind of made peace with that. Like, I was like, okay, well, they're not going to get me anymore. Like, it's just not going to be the type of thing where I'm like that invested, which was really tragic because they're like my favorite, and like the way that I've been so psychotic over them, like not feeling that psychotic over them again, I was just like, ooh, this is depressing. And then episode 5 came in and they turned that shit right around. Oh my god. Seeing Kate as a Viscountess and fitting in directly with the family, everybody calling her sister, her giving Eloise advice, period, her running the household, period, and her fitting into that role. Love. I knew they were going to have a baby. Like, I was like, they're going to have a baby. But the specifics of seeing the way that each of them were reacting to it was very interesting and very intriguing and felt very new to me. Seeing Anthony this season is just unbelievable to me. Like, this is what I want from him. I want to see him happy. I want to see him be a pathetic little puppy dog who can't let go of his wife. Like, it's so new. It's so exciting and it's so refreshing to see a totally different side of Kate and Anthony. Like, these are things that we haven't seen them do before, right? So, like, and what's really great about it is it's still characteristic. Like, Anthony's still Anthony. He's still, like, for example, when he finds out about Colin's engagement, his face drops, he's all serious, he's giving him a scowl, and then Kate's like, that's wonderful, isn't it? And he's like, oh, yeah. So you see the way that their relationship affects their personalities and how they mesh together and how, like, their life post happily ever after looks and how they kind of help each other and rein each other in and what that actually looks like in practice. as well as getting new sides and new dimensions to the character. Seeing Anthony be like, I mean, the way that he was like kissing her stomach and hugging her and yelling for all of Mayfair to hear was just, I mean, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I think it makes sense. I do have to say, a lot of it I was like, oh, so that's just Johnny Bailey. Like, I was like, oh, welcome home, Johnny Bailey. Like, it was giving very much Johnny. But at the same time, when I think about it, with all of these burdens lifted off of Anthony's shoulders, and with him finally finding this love and this acceptance and this belonging and purpose and all this type of stuff within this relationship with Kate, it makes sense to me that he's a lot less burdened, that he's a lot more playful, that he's a lot more exuberant. Like, that makes sense to me. Him being so happy about having a kid that he's like jokingly yelling in the carriage about it does make sense and does check out for Anthony, in my mind at least. But the interesting thing is, while it does seem like it's in character, we have never seen anything of the sort. We barely even see Anthony smile in seasons 1 and 2. So it just was so different. So I was happy that Johnny got to do something a little different, and I was happy that we got to explore a different side of this character individually, as well as in his relationship. And same thing with Kate being a Viscountess and all those responsibilities and just fitting in so seamlessly with the family. And the way that they kind of work off each other and balance each other. The scene, oh my god, the scene where they're giving Colin advice and it's too good. Like, it's just too fucking good. It's so funny. And Kate's being like, you know, queen of all queens, she's giving like really sound advice, and then Anthony's like, we don't have any problems. Our marriage isn't hard work. And she's like, you're wearisome tonight. Like, that is just gold. It's just, I mean, I never thought I'd see anything like that from them. That is so funny. It makes so much sense. It works. They're being utilized properly, I feel. They're getting a little development in their relationship. It's like, you do get some like context clues about certain things, about like the progression of their relationship that happen off screen. So it just was it was so entertaining to see them like that. And for Anthony to just not even be able to, he's like, I don't give a fuck about my brother having this crisis right now. We're that couple. What are you talking about, Kate? Like, what do you mean? Like, that was just so entertaining and heartwarming, and I just love to see, and her being vexed by him. Her being like, you are crazy tonight. Literally go away. You're not helping. All of that it just worked so well for me. I just really was surprised by it. I felt so much fulfillment from it. I was just like, yes, oh my god, we're getting character, we're getting story, we're getting new sides to them, we're getting happily ever after. It just made me really feel all the feels. It really did. And I really had given up on feeling anything for them. So I was really pleasantly surprised by that, and I was touched. And then I was really touched, I was really surprised they brought up, and this is apparently a controversial opinion, everybody hates this. And I get why they hate it logistically, the whole idea to go to India to give birth, whatever. And also the idea that maybe that just might be the writer's way of conveniently explaining their absence yet again. When I catch you. But I personally, when they were mentioning India, it made me tear up because Kate was so sidelined in her season. And so much of her story had to do with other people and other things. And, you know, we got some of her, like, parentification, the oldest sister and the responsibilities. That characterization for Kate we got. But there was so much missing, right? Like, there was so much from the book that they didn't delve into at all about her background, about her relationships with her parents, about her personality, about her story. So to see them talking about this thing that I really thought, oh, well, now that she's a Bridgerton, they're certainly never going to discuss any of her life before this. To see them mentioning that and to have it be a focus and a focal point within their relationship and the show was just, like, very surprising to me. I was very touched by that. I was like, oh my god, period. Yes, she's a Sharma too! Like, yes! Let's have that. And you know what? I would like a spinoff. And they could do much more with that. And I doubt they are going to, but I wish they would. I wish they would roll with that. Like, let's actually go explore. Let's talk about her dad and her mom, her birth mom and her birth dad, like, and those relationships. Let's do all the things that you didn't do in their season. Somehow, some way, you know what? Now that they're back, let's do it now. And I wish they would, and I still wish they would, and I'm still upset that they haven't. Like, they really could take advantage of that, and they really could take advantage of the format and give them a lot of storylines that they completely neglected in season 2, and they're not really choosing to. But even a mere mention of that type of thing was really surprising to me and felt very touching. And I was like, oh my god, we're talking about Kate's identity and her history and her heritage, and oh my god, and how that's gonna play in, and how the baby's gonna be on her side, but also their side, all the, like, I was just like, and her talking about writing still. Also, I loved all those discussions where she was talking about wanting to write, and you know, bringing up Edwina loving the outdoors now, like, all that, I just loved it. I was just like, yes, oh my god, I thought Kate was going to be, and she was sidelined, don't get me wrong, like she was absolutely sidelined yet again, but I thought she was going to be even more sidelined. I thought there would be no development or no delving into anything having to do with Kate individually as a character, separate and aside from her connection to the Bridgerton. So the fact that there was focus on that, I was like, what a beautiful day. Like, I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. They're sick and twisted for mentioning their wedding and not giving it to us. I will never get over that. I will never get over it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to be that person. Will never get over it. That is sick and twisted. That is a crime against humanity. That is so fucked up that they didn't give us their wedding. Ooh, no, okay, now that's season 2. Wait for my season 2 video. I promise you it's coming. I just have the most to say about season 2, so it's like I could talk for days straight about season 2. It's not even funny. But yeah, then mentioning it, I was like, yeah, fucking tell me about it. Tell me about it. I would have loved to see the most beautiful wedding that y'all had. They should have been in episode 8 also, because one, in comparison to Daphne in season 2, Daphne was in 5 out of 8 of the episodes. Kate and Anthony are in 3 out of 8. Be so for fucking real right now. I don't know what's happening. I don't really even know that I trust what people say. I don't know if it's scheduling. I don't know if it's other opportunities that they're taking. I don't know if it's right. I don't know why this is, but it's a missed opportunity. They need to be incorporating them more. They are probably going to be one of the most beloved couples of the entire series. People are always going to like to see them. If they continue developing them, even better. They also are the heads of the household. You know what I mean? It makes logical sense for them to be there, if nothing else. So there's only so much that you can like explain away. Like, oh, they took yet another honeymoon or a baby moon. Watch, they're gonna be on a baby moon in season 5. Watch. Or in season 4. Watch. But they should have been there for Fran's wedding. It's crazy that they weren't there for Fran's wedding. That is really crazy. And maybe they'll be there for her second wedding if she has a second wedding. We'll get to that. But Anthony not being there for one of his siblings' wedding is crazy. And I can like suspend disbelief, whatever, but I just feel like, especially since those are filmed in blocks together, they were already filming episodes 7 and 8 together. Could they not have literally just had Kate and Anthony standing in the drawing room in that scene? They didn't even have to have any lines. Like, I just needed them to be there. And then that way, at least they could tally up to 4 episodes out of 8, being in half of it. It just doesn't make sense for them to not be there as much as they aren't there. They really should have been in more episodes, and particularly episode 8. I think that would have been I think that was a really missed opportunity and easy and logical thing for them to be included in. So yeah, I'm still, you know, there's a lot of me that's still upset, that's still disappointed, still frustrated about it, but like, again, my expectations were in hell, so I think I'm just pleasantly surprised by getting literally anything from them. And I was like moved that the continuation of their story did really make me feel things. Like I was really coming to terms with the fact that I was like, okay, well, they're just not going to develop them anymore. We're just not going to really progress past this point. But I do feel like they did do that, and I was very grateful for that. Also, they just love each other so much, I could literally throw up. I could literally like projectile vomit. Like it's so crazy. The way that the eyes, Chico, they never lie. Like the way that they look at each other, the way that they are, seeing them in such like vulnerable, soft spaces is so heartwarming and touching and healing to me, because I'm just like, oh my god, they had to be so hard and defensive during their season, and now they get to be in love. Love to see it. Okay, now for Eloise. We'll talk about Eloise very briefly. I still stand by, I think she's very valid for the anger that she has and for giving Penelope an ultimatum. She's in a bad spot. I understand her wanting her brother to know. I understand her being conflicted. I also think there's a lot more complexity that people aren't addressing in this whole situation. Because one, Eloise, whether or not you think she should have known that Penelope had feelings, she didn't. So this is a blindside after an already huge blindside and like semi-betrayal, a lie that has been kept between Penelope and Eloise. So we have that, and then we have this. Yet again, another one, huge. And then she's come to the conclusion pretty quickly that not only have Paul and Penelope been keeping it from her in the current day, but this seems like it's been kept from her for a very long time, which I think it's valid for her to go back and question her relationship. Not that it's true, of course, like, of course that's not the only reason that Penelope and her were friends, but I don't think it's unreasonable of her to go back and re-examine their relationship and be like, was I just being used the entire time? Was she trying to get to Colin the entire time? I think that's a very, like, valid fear and thing to ponder. I also think that, like, you know, she's mourning the idea of, like, Penelope and her growing old together as spinsters, and that whole idea, and Penelope not, like, her independence. She's feeling very lonely also, because all these people are coupling up, and she says as much. Like, there's so much there that's so complicated, not to mention, like, oh, her brother kept the secret from her, and her brother knows how much they're at odds and is still gonna do this, despite how much it might hurt Eloise, and, like, there's just a lot of really complicated issues and feelings that come along with this that I think Eloise is completely entitled to feel and to be upset about. It's a lot, and I really don't think people give Eloise grace for that, which I find very strange. But I think she's actually, you know what, she's maybe better than me, because I think she is pretty kind in giving Penelope the opportunity to tell him in her own time. And I think by the time Penelope doesn't, I think it's pretty valid for her to be like, okay, well, tick-tock on the clock. Like, let's go, because you're obviously not going to do it. And I need to tell my brother. And her not wanting to keep it a secret from her brother. Like, that's another thing. She's put in a hard position there. It's just so complicated. It's so complicated. So again, I stand by her having those, like, really complex feelings, and I just think she's in a really rough spot. To be fair, all of them are. But I don't understand. There's just so much, like, hatred around the way that Eloise handles this, when I think she actually was very, very kind and loving toward both Penelope and Colin in this, despite what it did to herself. And we see that later on. I love the decision for her to basically, like, put aside her own issues and be like, okay, well, this is going to break Colin, and I don't want to break Colin's heart, so I'm going to put aside my own issues in order to try and spare him that heartbreak. And obviously, like, it doesn't work out that way, but Eloise's willingness to do it and her observance of it in the first place is really, it shows character growth to me. I'm like, oh, wow, interesting. And it shows how much she cares for these people. And to be fair, even though she's mad at Penn, I do think there's an element of her protection of Colin and her protection of Penn warring with each other. Because I do think there's certain times where it's like she does feel protective of Penn. She doesn't want Penn to lose her love. She doesn't want Penn to be completely alone and completely abandoned and completely exposed. Like, it's a very complicated thing, and I don't think people are looking at it in a way that kind of takes into consideration all those complexities. I also like that her and Penn's road to reconciliation was not really that clear-cut and easy and dry. Like, it was very complicated. It ebbed back and forth. It wasn't smooth sailing whatsoever. Even the place that they end up, I don't think is, you know, the same. Like, and I think that's a very realistic way of showing this growth. Like, of course things are going to be changed. Like, things are very different now. This whole thing has happened, not to mention now she's married to her brother. There's a lot that has changed. So, like, the love is still there, and we still have them reconciling, but, like, at the end of the day, there's a lot that it was not easy to get there. It didn't feel like a TV show. You know what I mean? Like, where, like, they were like, oh, well, all is forgiven and now let's move on. It was, like, more complicated than that. It took more time. It was more painful. There was more back and forth. There's more struggle there, which I think is true to life. So I liked seeing that as well. Yet again, another point where they took the kind of more difficult way through that feels more realistic. Overall, I just loved Eloise this season. I loved, again, her involvement in the love triangle. I still maintain that love triangle is elite, so good, so complicated, so juicy, so many dynamics. Really touching. It makes me feel for each of the characters individually. Like, it makes me like the characters individually more, and each of their relationships with each other, because I see that the love that they have for all of them and the warring sides of them, like, trying to deal with all of it. Her participation in that, I found her storyline with Cressida also interesting. And then, by the end, I just think she had so much character growth. Like, this is the most mature and emotionally intelligent and selfless Eloise that we've ever seen. She has some moments where she reverts back, but, I mean, she's a human being. There are just so many moments where we saw, like, true growth from her. Like, more so than I think maybe any other character this entire season, honestly. Like, this was really satisfying to see Eloise grow this way and to change and to kind of realize her mistakes and kind of change the way that she looked at certain things, but still be Eloise, you know what I mean? She still has that core, and I really am interested to see where they're going with her character, like why she's going to Scotland. That's very interesting, and her saying, like, you know, if I'm going to change the world, I need to see more of it. I'm like, what are you setting up? What are you cooking up here? I'll let you cook, but what are you cooking up? I'm very excited to see wherever they go with Eloise. But I loved her arc this season. I thought she was so well developed, and I just loved it. I just loved it. So good. So now we'll go to Fran and John, and then we'll get to the other part of that. But for Fran and John, just first off, I love them so much it hurts. I love them so fucking much. It's not even funny. This is my life. This is not funny. Do not toy with me. I can't believe that I have gotten myself into this situation, or rather that they have gotten me into this situation, because you didn't have to make me love them this much. But I'm glad that they did. I'm glad that they did. I love suffering. I love suffering in fiction. You know what I mean? I'm like, but I just love them. I think they're perfect for each other. I love both those actors. I think they have good chemistry. They're so refreshing. They're such breaths of fresh air to see these different types of people and personalities and a different type of love as a result. But also, they feel very realistic to me, because while they are much more shy and introverted and a little quirkier and weirder than like every other character, you see them adapt and you see them participate within the larger family dynamic, which is so true to life, because there are people who are shy and awkward and have these quirks, but they're still able to interact. You know what I mean? It's not, they could have done a very like cut and dry version of it where it's like, they can't hang with anybody, and they really struggle to connect to anyone, and they can't be in any social situation whatsoever. They just fail miserably. But that's just not like true to life. For some people it is, but for the majority of people who have these issues of like being shy or introverted or any of those types of things, it doesn't mean that they can't adapt. It doesn't mean that they don't live their life and still participate. It doesn't mean that they don't have relationships with other people or that they don't interact with other people. So that felt very like, it felt very well fleshed out, and like they were like real characters. It felt like there was a lot of depth and nuance to them, to have these things that made them very unique from the rest of the characters and the setting itself, but also to see them interact in and within it in a way that makes sense for those qualities that are unique. Violet's opposition to their match really started to piss me off. And now I'm worried. I'm worried about what that could mean, what that might indicate, and I'll get to that later, because that's, I mean, it involves the other stuff. But I was just like, Violet, don't piss me off. You were doing so good this season. You were such a queen this season. What are you doing? Let them be happy. Let them be happy. I love the sentiment that not every attachment has to be hard-fought or dramatic. I think that's a really great thing. And again, I'll talk about it later, but like, I really hope that they stick with this, because it's true. It's really good to see a different representation of that, and to see a different type of love and a different type of narrative, and people prioritizing different things. Some people might like to have less of a dramatic attachment, or might want to prioritize feeling safe or understood or comfortable with someone over other things, and that doesn't necessarily make it less valid, right? Like, there's a spectrum there. There's a lot of things to discuss there, and so I really liked seeing, again, a different type of love with these two people, and it was frustrating to see people invalidating it over and over and over again, because I felt like this is a great thing, especially for the show, but just in general, to kind of ponder and contemplate that there are these different types of love, and not all of it has to be so, you know, so filled with tension and strife and drama. And you know what, like, that's a romanticized notion, where a lot of times that can be very harmful. That can end up being toxic. And also, passion doesn't last long. Like, there are other things that are important to consider, and I'm not saying that the other couples in the show don't consider that, but I just like the emphasis on the fact that not every relationship has to be like this huge whirlwind, like dramatic, like, oh, no, if you don't love me, I'm gonna kill myself, like that type of thing. I really liked that they had representation of that. And so, and I'll get to them. They're sick and twisted for emphasizing last dying breath in their wedding vows. How dare they? That was sick! Y'all are sick. Their dance at the wedding was so cute. I just fucking, like, what can I say? I fucking love them. I'm obsessed with them. They're everything to me. I think they're so wholesome. They're so pure. They're such literal angels. And I feel a perfect match, which, well, okay, well, here we go. Here we go, guys. Get into the main controversy, the main topic. So for the Michael/Michaela of it all, first I want to preface this by saying that any and all hate, negativity, harassment directed towards the actors involved in this situation is so uncalled for. Any hate towards Hannah Dodd, Victor Ali, Masali Beduza is completely inappropriate and unacceptable. On no planet is that acceptable whatsoever. This is not their fault at all, okay? So anybody that's taking it out on them or making it a personal issue with them, just do not do that. That is crazy, okay? That's crazy. Don't do that. And I just want to make it clear. And I want to make it clear that, like, I want to support these people, these actors who have taken these positions. Like, of course they've taken these roles. You know what I mean? Like, why are they at fault for taking roles that they've been given, that they've worked hard for? It doesn't make any sense to me to really be going after them. And also, you know, it's not insignificant, as many people have pointed out, that these are actors who are already going to receive, unfortunately, a lot of hatred and harassment based on their race and then being dark-skinned. That has already been a thing. I mean, I saw it in part 1 when people were like, oh, well, they were sad at him being cast as John because they wanted a light-skinned actor, which is, I mean, it was just, like, disgusting. But, and especially the way they were talking about it was just, like, really disturbing. I was like, oh, God, because they really thought they were right, too. Like, they really thought they were spitting. I was like, oh, you don't even see it, do you? You don't even understand what it is that you're actually saying or doing. Disturbing. But as people of color in this show, despite the fact that this is a very diverse show and there are some people of color in the show already, unfortunately, they are still going to receive a lot of hate and harassment just from being people of color, not to mention darker-skinned actors. So I want to protect them. Like, I do not want any hatred going their way. No hatred should be going to any of these actors whatsoever, but especially people who are already maybe a little bit more vulnerable or are prone to being attacked already. Like, I want those two actors to feel supported and to feel accepted and to feel celebrated. And generally speaking, I live for them. Like, I love Victor Ali and his John. I don't know about, like, Michaela yet as a character, but I think she is lovely and talented and beautiful and stunning. And I thought she was Sophie. That's what everybody had been saying for years. So, like, for a year now, she has been Sophie in my mind already. So I was already living for her. I was already accepting her. I was already like, Perry Masali, let's go, bitch. Like, I was just like, you know what I mean? Like, she's a queen to me. Like, she's everything. So I maintain that here, and I just don't think any frustration about the storyline decisions that have been made or the changes should be directed in any way towards them whatsoever. Okay? That is just not okay. I am going to do a whole really long video on this because I think it's so complicated, so complex, and there's so much nuance that I really feel that the audience is missing entirely. It's a very black and white issue somehow, which I think it's so much more complicated than that. It's so much more, there's so much more gray area in these issues, but the way that it's discussed is so reductive and so counterproductive that it's really like, that's what I'm most upset about more than anything, is the discussion surrounding this concept in general. And because there's so many elements to it, and I feel like so many valid points on either side, whether you're for or against this decision, there's so much to talk about, so I am going to do a separate video on that, and I really encourage people to, like, go and watch that when it's done, because I'm going to put a lot of thought and a lot of time and effort and care into, like, discussing all the different intricacies and complexities within it, and all the different perspectives, and kind of, like, coming to a consensus on that. And I want for there to be able to be, like, productive and respectful discussion without it being such a hot button topic, like, so heated, such vitriol directed so immediately towards other people. Like, this is an opportunity to kind of discuss these concepts and these topics in a way where it's like we're open-minded to it, and we acknowledge certain things, and we maybe acknowledge certain ways that we might be wrong or that other people might be right. You know what I mean? Like, I just think there's a lot more room for that type of discussion to be had, and I see nobody having it. So I am happy to have it because I think it's important. And the way that this has been discussed has driven me absolutely nuts the entire time. Ever since there was the idea of maybe gender bending one of the love interests, on both sides, I want to make it clear, on both sides of the spectrum, people who are very for or very against, I found the rhetoric surrounding it and the discussion about it extremely bizarre and frustrating to me. So this is, again, regardless of anything that now this is confirmed, just the idea of gender bending one of these love interests in general has been around for a long time now. And I have always been deeply, like, bothered by the discussions that surrounded it. So I am going to do a separate video on it, and I'm really not going to get into much in this video because I could go on for literally ever. All this to say, my personal feelings on this, I am of two minds. So there is, I am going to be honest, there's a part of me that is a little bummed. There's a little disappointed. It's like, I didn't want this to happen, right? Like, it wasn't, when people would talk about it prior and be like, would you want a gender bend? I was like, I mean, I wouldn't want that. Would I be, like, so angry at it? Not necessarily, but it changes a lot. And I stand by that. I maintain that. And that's a whole other conversation to get into, but it is a change. And I think it's important to acknowledge that it is a change. It's a change from the book. And with that is going to come a lot of feelings and thoughts and discussion, some of which are valid, some of which are very charged, very homophobic. And again, I'm not trying to say that there's not homophobic discussion or reactions around this. There absolutely is. Like, that's a large majority. But I don't think that every person who has expressed maybe a little frustration or disappointment in their favorite book not getting adapted the exact way that the other couples are getting adapted, I don't think that that necessarily inherently means like, oh, you're homophobic and oh, you hate these people and all this stuff. Because I think two things can exist at once. I think you can both be a little disappointed or a little bummed about it not going the way that you had expected it to go, and also excited about the prospect and the possibility of this new interpretation. And that's kind of where I am. So, like, again, I am a little bummed, but at the same time, I'm very intrigued about what this is going to look like. I am very excited for these people. I'm excited for people who are going to get more representation from that, and like that is going to be expanded that way. I'm really interested. You know what I mean? Like, I'm accepting of it. I'm embracing it. It might not have been my first choice or the thing that I would have done or wanted most, but it's exciting. It's intriguing to me. It's interesting. I'm like, oh, okay. And the more that I've thought about it, the more I'm like, I just see how this could be a slay. I really do. If they execute it properly, this could be the slay of the century. Because, like, there are so many things about this particular story which I really think could lend itself to this type of dynamic. And I'll talk about that here, because more so the other video will talk about general concepts, but for here, you know, when I was thinking about if they were to gender bend one of the love interests, who would it be, right? And in my mind, I was kind of trying to think, and I was trying to decide, and you know what, there's arguments that could be made for or against each of them, but when I think about Michael, you know, while his gender is absolutely an influential part in the book, and his relationship with Francesca, in that he takes over the title and estate of his cousin, as well as the love of his cousin. So that, like, that identity-wise and the guilt there is very deeply rooted and makes a lot of sense, because he's basically pretty much replacing him. But that being said, I do still think that the element of guilt can be there, whether or not the element of taking over the title and estate is there, right? You can still have that element of that conflict and that guilt by taking one of your family members' loves or wives, regardless of what gender you are. You can still have that. So I think, like, a pillar of that relationship and of his character arc and his struggles in that book is that guilt and grappling with that, because he loved John and he loves Franny and he doesn't, you know what I mean? Like, he's conflicted with that. I think that can still exist regardless of gender, and we can take out the element of there being the estate and the title, and it still is the same main device, effectively. So once I thought about that, I was like, okay, we can see that. I can see how that, like, there are other stories that I think are a little bit more dependent on gender. Like, for example, well, this could get, I could talk about this forever, but like for Sophie, for me personally, I just think that so much of Sophie's arc and identity and her relationship with Benedict has to do with her being a woman. It's so influential, and being a lower class woman, being a bastard, a female bastard, like, that's very influential to not only her as a character, but then the way that she's treated by society, and then the way that her and Benedict interact, and lends itself to this imbalanced power dynamic, especially as Benedict is the man in this situation and he is of a higher class. Like, her being a woman is influential in the story. Not to say that it's not necessarily in Michael's story, but I feel it's a little bit less influential than, say, Sophie, for example. Or, if not that, then you could keep a lot of the same principal issues the same, regardless. What I can also see being translated well is that one element of Michael and Fran's relationship is that he has loved her all along. He's been pining for her, yearning for her, longing for her in secret. And I think that could translate very well to a lesbian dynamic. You know, like a forbidden love, like keeping it on the down low, keeping it under wraps. Like, I can see that translating as well, and that still being a main storyline within the show, just through a different lens. I can also see some of the sexual exploration or like opening up. I could see that translating, one, either in a way where it's like, okay, well, Francesca might have had a husband and she might be experienced with sex more so than the other heroines, but, you know, this is going to be the first time where she has an intimate relationship or encounter with a woman. So it's still new, it's still fresh, she's still learning, she's still broadening her horizons, and Michaela is helping her do that. Similarly to how Michael somewhat helped Francesca in the book do that, just by, I don't know, she kind of was a little bit more, it was a little bit more saucy. Like, it was a little bit, it was like, that element of their relationship was really strong. And again, that is something that was beneficial to that book that really set it apart, was the fact that Francesca was not a virgin, right? She had that experience. So then you could go in, and then it was kind of like all bets are off when you go to the second relationship, the second marriage. It's like, oh, they can kind of go crazy. They can kind of be crazy with this. Like, what's going on? So I could see multiple ways where they could make that work for this narrative. But what I am worried about, I am worried about the direction that they seem to be going with this. Because one of the most beautiful and influential parts of When He Was Wicked, Francesca's book, Francesca and Michael's story, is that it illustrates the fact that you can have multiple great loves in your life. And they can be very different, and one doesn't invalidate the other. And I am fearful that they're going down the road of basically she never actually loved John. The way that they had her potentially react to their kiss, and also just her like being tongue-tied and losing her words and being stunned when she first saw Michaela, makes me go, ooh, are they trying to do a thing where like she's never been in love and this is no love and this isn't real and it's compulsive heterosexuality, and then she's gonna be like yearning, and she never loved Michael. She loved him as a person but never actually loved him, but then like loves Michaela. And I just think it's reductive to do that. Like, I think it does a disservice to all of the characters and to like the complexities of that, where it's like you can have two great loves of your life. One doesn't have to invalidate the other. One can be very different. Like, one can be more passionate, but that doesn't make the one that felt more comfortable or more easy completely invalid. Like, I really don't want them to take away the aspect of Francesca having genuinely had a loving relationship with John. And I mean romantic loving. Because then what type of message are we sending? If they are doing the setup with Violet, talking about like, oh, well, she talks about meeting Edmund, that she didn't even know her name, or she didn't even know how to speak or whatever, and then you juxtapose that to Francesca's reaction to Michaela, then I'm like, well, what kind of message are you sending? Because it just seems reductive to me. It just seems a little simplistic. It's like, oh, okay, so you are saying that every single love has to be dramatic and you have to have, you know, fireworks and the world has to fall around you and it has to be thunderbolts and all this stuff. Like, and I just feel like that's a less interesting take. I feel like it's less complicated. I feel like it's less nuanced. I feel like it's less realistic, probably, actually. I like the complexity and the issues that come along with, like, reckoning with the fact that you can love this person and also love this person, and that might not negate each other. It's really complicated, but I don't love where it seems like they might be going, where it's like, oh no, this wasn't her real love, this wasn't a real love, but Michaela is, where it's like, I'm gonna be disappointed if they go that route. I really want for Fran and John to have a loving relationship. I want for that to be real, true love, and then I want for her to have a second real true love. You know what I mean? I don't think it has to invalidate, and I think actually, by making them different genders in the first place, you're already baking it in that there's going to be a lot of differences between the two, right? A lot of differences, and a lot of exploration, a lot of, opening up for Francesca just by virtue of the fact that she's dating she's going to be with a woman rather than a man. So I don't think you need to invalidate one to prop up the other. And I really hope that they don't do that, but it seems like they are, and I don't like that decision at all. I really don't like that decision. I'm more disheartened about that than anything else, I think. I really hope that if they are going down that road, maybe run it back. Let's not do that. And I could definitely see them doing a thing where it's like, well, she did love John, she just wasn't in love with John. But again, I just think that I'm like, okay, sure. But like, again, what is the message we're sending? That every single love has to be like fireworks and like all this type of stuff? Because I thought that was such an interesting and refreshing thesis statement to have that type of representation of this other type of romantic love and relationship within Bridgerton. Only for them to maybe potentially be going back on it and being like, no, actually she never loved John, but Michaela, absolutely. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay. Why couldn't she love both? ¿Por qué no los dos? You know what I'm saying? I'm like, why can't we have both? I don't understand. But I'm interested. I'm interested to see where all that goes. I'm intrigued. I wonder if we'll see a lot of them in Scotland. I wonder if we'll see a lot of Michaela and Fran reacting or interacting. I wonder how much more of John and Fran's relationship we'll see, because I love them. I really do, and they got me very attached to it. And I would be upset. I would be upset, honestly, if they made it so that, like, she never loved him. I just feel like that's just not the right move. I can see the impulse and the appeal to making that type of change, but, like, I just think it's reductive. It's also up in the air whether they're saying that Francesca is, gay versus bisexual or pansexual or anything in between the spectrum of that. Like, what are they saying she is? It's interesting. I don't know. I can't really speak because I don't know yet, but, like, I just hope they don't go down that route, and I'm a little worried that they are going to. Benedict, okay, so for Benedict's thing, you know what? I'm surprised that they did it. I really am. I was surprised. They said Happy Pride Month. I'm not mad at all at the decision to follow through with a bisexual storyline for Benedict whatsoever. I want to make that extremely clear. I've never been against that. I never will be against that. It makes sense to me. It checks out. However, I do want to say that I think, to me, it feels a little shoehorned in or something, because where that narratively would have made sense to me for them to explore it is season 2. Whereas it felt almost like season 2 was a response to all the people being like, wait, is Benedict bi or gay, or is he exploring, or is he queer, like whatever. There was a lot of discussion around Benedict's sexuality in season 1 after his interactions with, the art crowd and Mr. Granville and all that type of stuff. There was a lot of reactions. And then directly after that, then he's like with a woman in season 2, which to me felt like a response. It was like, oh, well, this is just confirming that he's straight. Not that you can't be bisexual and be with a woman, but do you know what I mean? Like, just from a showrunner perspective, from like a writing perspective, to me, it was like, if they were going to do it, then it would make the most sense for them to expand upon that in season 2 rather than season 3. Whereas to have yet another season of him with a woman and then only to introduce this in the second half of season 3, I just was like, oh, okay. It felt like a little bit of like rolling back. Like, they're like, okay, actually, we do want him to be bisexual. So, like, yeah, he is. Whereas I just think it would have made more sense and would have fit a little better. It wouldn't have stuck out so much if they had really gone down that road in season 2. But I'm not mad at it at all. I do also wonder, though, I'm like, if Benedict's season is next, which I think it probably is, and they aren't going to gender bend that, which I don't think they are, then it's like, did you give him even enough time to, like, explore that or to understand that? You know what I mean? Like, it's so new. It's so... Or are they doing a thing of, like, he just basically, has never felt anything for anyone? And it didn't matter if it was a boy or a girl or man or woman or, whatever. He's just never actually felt any romantic attachment, which I was surprised by. I thought that's the route that they were going to go down, but they did effectively really do the same effect, where they had Tilly be in love with him, but him be like, oh, actually, never felt anything, queen. Because then it sets him up for that kind of introspection where he's like, yeah, never been in love. That's kind of crazy. So then it can juxtapose to when he does finally find his love, when he does find Sophie. It's like so different. It's the whole world opens up, right? Like, he sees the difference there. It's very obvious to him. So it can have the same effect with setting up his storyline for his season and his love story. But I was a little surprised by them doing that. Not just the bi storyline, but by them having, like, Tilly like him and him not really being that into Tilly. But yeah, I mean, generally speaking, like, I don't know, they could have done more with Benedict, like, overall. But I'm hesitant to speak because I just don't know where they're going with it exactly. I don't know if anybody else is going to, like, see it the way that I do, but just from a writing perspective, like, I just think season 2 would have felt a little bit more natural for that kind of exploration to take place. Versus having a whole season where, like, they just don't address that at all and they don't have any hints to it whatsoever again, and then they bring it back. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me. Bi Benedict is like, I'm like, yeah, sure, absolutely. I don't, you know what I mean? Like, who's surprised? I mean, it checks out to me. It would have checked out if he was straight to me too, to be fair, but, like, Bi Benedict checks out to me. I'm like, okay, yeah, I can see it. I see the vibe. So yeah, I think they underutilized Benedict for sure. They could have done a lot more, but I'm just interested to see what they do. Oh God, I know that they're writing right now. Literally get me in the writer's room for Benedict's season. It's not even funny. The way that's, I mean, as of right now, it's my favorite book. And oh God, it can be such a serve. It can be such a serve. I really hope that they execute it properly. Oh God. Oh my God. Regardless, Luke Thompson is a slay. He's a slay every single time, with every single person. He has chemistry with everybody. I feel safe in his hands, just generally speaking. Even if the writing sucks, I feel safe in his hands. So thank you for your service, Luke Thompson. As for Violet and Marcus, I was really pleasantly surprised that they kind of, like, had their storyline go somewhere. I really had a feeling that they were just going to drop it or ignore it, or it wasn't really going to go anywhere, or something like that. But I liked that they had it develop. It seems like maybe it'll be a recurring storyline or something that continues in the next seasons. I liked that they fixed their whole relationship, like with each of them individually, you know what I mean? Like, they fixed Violet and Lady Danbury's potential squabbles, and then they fixed Marcus and Lady Danbury's relationship. I thought the backstory was interesting to, like, weave it into the story that we got from Queen Charlotte, and to hear her, like, you know, say Soma, that was very interesting. That had me gagged. I was like, she was great in that scene, by the way. She fucking killed that shit. Adjoa Ando, the actor that you are. But also, yeah, I did feel a little, once he, like, came back and explained it, I was like, yeah, he's Ted. Like, what, I was like, Lady Danbury, I love you so much, and I understand your anger. It feels a little misplaced, you know what I mean? I was like, it doesn't need to be on your little brother. I don't know, I might place my anger elsewhere, but I guess nobody else is alive to place anger on, so a lot of things get complicated with family dynamics like that. A lot of resentments and trauma end up going to the wrong places and affecting the wrong relationships and the wrong people. So I thought that was good. I liked that, like, Violet and Lady Danbury were prioritizing their relationship as well, and, like, Violet was like, you need to fix whatever's going on with your sister, and then, you know, Lady Danbury's like, whatever happens with him, you're my friend, number one, so, period. So I liked the way that all went. By the end, I was, like, touched by their relationship, you know, when he, like, apologizes and things like that. I was like, oh. It's nice to see Lady Danbury have some family, for sure. As for the Featherington subplot, oh my god, am I pleasantly surprised. I really did not think it was possible. I didn't see how they had the time or the wherewithal to do this. What a turnaround. I really felt like they fleshed out these characters in ways that they never have before. They made it so much more complicated. I mean, it was just so good. Like, I'm like, the where they end up, it's very surprising. I just never thought they would be this serious about the Featherington. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I did not think we would be going into the inner workings of their mind and heart, and that they were going to have a change of heart, and that they were going to feel bad about the way that they treated Penelope, and that there was going to be this growth and this development of an actual affection and relationship and support between all of them. And, like, seeing that grow was very touching. It was very fulfilling. For Portia, it makes a lot more sense to me, because I'm just like, I've seen shades of that with Portia before, and I really loved, Polly Walker did a great job with that. I think that turn, it makes sense. It's in character. She's still Portia, right? Like, she's still Portia. She's not totally, you know. But you get a little bit of her backstory, and you hear her talk about her marriage and the way that she's been raised and how that affects the way that she raises her kids, and, you know, all this type of stuff. Her support for Penn in the end, like, with Lady Whistledown, was really touching. Their relationship by the end was really touching. Like, and I felt it was genuine and sincere. I think a lot of people are probably going to watch that and feel like, oh, well, it's just Portia being Portia. But, like, I felt a decided shift. I was like, okay, she means this. She's real. Like, she does have these regrets. She does have these feelings. She does want this closeness. She does want to change her ways. And, you know, I liked that they acknowledged that there is a similar dynamic and similar personality traits between Penelope and Portia. I mean, she's probably the most similar out of all three of the daughters to Portia in her industriousness and, you know, her kind of, like, boss mentality, the way that she takes initiative, things like that, with her Lady Whistledown identity. That's very much, I feel, probably inspired by Portia in a lot of ways. So that was good that they talked about that, and then they talked about both of them doing better in the future. You know, they're like, we need to change a little bit. We need to grow. We need to work on this. And we need to do things for the better. And so I really just loved, and then, like, Prudence saying that she was a beautiful bride, and, like, them crying, and, like, them being happy for her with Whistledown, Penelope paying for their ball, and, like, and then at the end, all of them with baby. Like, I just thought, I was like, I didn't expect it, but it was, like, very touching to me. I was like, it was, like, so wholesome. I was like, wow, okay, they really went there. They really, like, patched this up, like, somehow. I thought the plane was going down. How'd you turn it right around? Like, I was just like, oh, okay, they're doing this. And then I love that being there, because then we have the addition of the himbo husbands of all time, you know, Dankworth and Finch, and now we have Colin added to that dynamic, and then also we have a frenemy relationship that ended up just being friends. Like, Portia and Violet being co-grandmas, but both being, like, loving, is actually something I never thought I'd see, but I am happy to see it. Like, I love to see it. I love that there's still an element of, like, a little bit of rivalry or a little bit of reticence between the two families, because they are so different, like, on principle speaking, you know what I mean? Like, I like the beef between them. Speaking of which, loved Colin dressing down Portia, absolutely, it's all I've ever wanted. But then there is, like, begrudging affection that comes into it, because they have this genuine relationship that develops with Penn, and then they're going to be, you know, raising kids and grandkids alongside each other, and, like, I was really surprised that they went down that route, but it was very wholesome. It was very wholesome to see. I'm impressed that they did that so seamlessly in a way that made so much sense to me. Okay, so now we get down to Colin and Penelope. So I love that they kept Ryder Cullen. I really do. I think the way that they weaved in some of the storylines and the threads from the book of like Colin's jealousy was really, really well done. It felt more apt. It was good. It was good. It was really good. Like, what can I say? Like, it was just like, it was better than the book. It just made more sense, felt more apt, felt more in character, made a lot of sense for him, and I feel like explained it well. Like, I think a lot of his emotions, including his envy and his insecurity about his own writing, were depicted pretty well. Like, it's like you can see how that is just another element that really adds to this betrayal and this being such a big deal for Colin. I can talk about them individually and in their relationship. It's difficult. There's just so much to talk about. It's not even funny. I really didn't think they were going to do a period of them like going back and forth or fighting or him being mad or anything like that. So I was really pleasantly surprised that they did have that because that's what I wanted. Did they get into as much as I would have liked them to? No. Would it have benefited, yet again, from more episodes or longer runtimes for each episode? Yes. But, again, I was expecting so little that I was surprised that they did any of it. Like, I was like, oh my god, they're like having a fight. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, oh, they're like talking about it. Like, they're getting into it. And every time that they got into it, everything that they said, like, back and forth to each other that needed to be said, and all the grievances that were being addressed, and all the types of, like, conflicting emotions, and all this type of stuff, I just was like, oh, period, yes, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I couldn't believe my fortune. I just was like, oh my god, they're doing it. They're doing it. They're actually addressing this. This is crazy. And again, could they have done more? Yes. Should they have done more? Yes. If I was the writer, would I have done more? Yes. But given time constraints and, you know, the format and everything like that, like, I think they did a really good job of addressing all those things and then moving on from it, right? Like, they were able to kind of move on from it. I'm not happy about the lack of sex scenes. I'm not. I mean, what can I say? I know a lot of people have a lot to say about that, and it's a larger debate, but I just am like, guys, these are based on romance novels, okay? Be so fucking for real with me right now. Like, a large part of the appeal of that is their spicy scenes. To behave as though it's crazy or, like, wrong to be expecting or anticipating those types of scenes, a good amount of them in the show, is just not the move. Like, it's just, I'm like, of course you expect that. Of course you want that. Of course you wish for that. It's a staple of the genre. And yes, I do think that, like, it shouldn't be just in there just for fun, right? Like, it shouldn't just be, like, it shouldn't be too much. It shouldn't be overkill. There should be narrative purpose and function, and it should make sense for each of the couples and the timeline and everything like that. Like, I absolutely agree with that. There is a tasteful and good way to do it that it serves the story and the characters, for sure. But I think they definitely could have done a lot more that in a way that served the story and the characters, and I actually feel like it's a bit of a disservice, especially once they do make up, that we didn't get a full-on scene of them being intimate. The fact that we only got a sex scene of them from their first time is not satisfying to me, because I'm like, okay, but that's their, like, and again, well, first time I watched that scene, I wasn't crazy about it, and then the more that I've watched it, I like it more and more each time, and now I like it overall, although the carriage scene remains number one. That is superior. That is so crazy. The carriage scene ate down so bad, it's not even funny. But, so the first time scene, like, I like that scene, and it's good, and there's a lot of good things about it, but I'm like, I want to see the progression of their relationship. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want it. I want to see their first time, yes, but I want to see how getting to know each other and, you know, forging intimacy, especially, I want to see what a post-Lady Whistledown reveal intimate scene looks like between the two of them. You know what I mean? And yes, we got the little 5-second thing, but that's not what I mean. I mean, I want a before, during, and after. Like, I want a proper scene. Really getting into it. Like, I want to see them reconcile. I want to see what that looks like. I want to see Penelope's exploration and discovery of her sexuality through this relationship with Colin. I want to see Colin's, you know, journey of maybe discovering his fulfillment in a committed, loving relationship as it pertains to sex, whereas before, any of the sexual encounters that he had left him feeling hollow and empty. I want to see more of that progression. I want to see them grow as characters individually and in their relationship. and bond and get better and kind of learn things about each other and kind of really go there. And I want to see different elements of their personalities and their dynamic reflected in their intimate encounters. And I just feel like I just was like, oh, okay, so all we saw of them like actually have sex was like their first time. There's so much more that happens after that I'm like, okay. Like, it feels very strange to me that we didn't have like a proper scene of them being intimate post that Lady Whistledown reveal, because that's so crucial to the relationship. That's so crucial to them accepting each other, knowing each other fully, and making that decision to go through life together and, just fully knowing and understanding each other. And like, there's a pretense there with the first time where it's like there was this secret that was being held that can kind of tarnish the idea of the vulnerability and the intimacy of it. I'm not saying that it does completely for me, but it can. If you think about it, like, logically, it's like, okay, well, there was still something being held back. So while you feel that this is a very vulnerable moment where they're really showing each other their true colors, as they say, or like that they're really connecting, there's still something that's between them that's holding them back, that is keeping them from being the best versions of themselves and the couple that they are. So once that obstacle is eliminated, I would like to see follow-up from that. So I just found it, I was like, okay guys, sure. Also, it felt like it was like hyped up a lot more, that there was a lot more, and I was really looking forward to that for many reasons, but I just, yeah, I mean, what can I say? I think narratively it makes a lot of sense to want the progression of their intimate relationship as well as their relationship, because as you see their relationship progress, their intimate relationship is progressing as well, especially in this society where women know so little and men are so experienced. Like, there's just so much that could have been explored and talked about that would have been really relevant and interesting and meaningful to the story. Not just like, just like, oh, I just want sex, like I'm a sex fiend. Like, it's not like that. I mean, sure I am, but like, I want for there to be meaningful interactions, and there was a great opportunity for there to be one after the Lady Whistledown reveal and after the reconciliation, and they didn't fucking do it. And I'm just like, what is wrong with you? And also, this is separate and aside from this, but just generally speaking, I'm like, I'm so sorry. When is somebody going to match my freak? Because, guys, I love that romance novels are being adapted. Y'all are scaredy cats. Y'all are skirting around the issues. You're not giving the people what they want. And so I guess it's up to me. I'm just going to have to adapt a romance novel into a movie or TV show and really go there, because nobody's really going there. And it's starting to piss me off a little bit, because I'm like, okay, sure, guys, sure. Because again, I just feel like, and again, generally speaking, I do think Bridgerton does a great job of balancing all these different things, and like, I love the intimate scenes for Bridgerton and like what it does, and I love that their reaction and their adaptation. But just generally speaking, I'm like, as if it were me writing this season, you know what I mean? If it were me writing next season and all the seasons, so nobody's gonna match my freak apparently. And so I guess it's just up to me to do that. And so, keep a lookout for some romance novels being adapted into TV and film by moi, yours truly. And I guarantee you we'll be getting into it, actually. Anyway. But I like that they had that conflict. I still need more time to think about certain scenes and individual things. I don't know how I feel about their wedding a little bit, because like, angst period. But then there was part of me that wished they were a little bit happier on their wedding, but then like, they are in love and he does give her the go ahead and he does want to say that. The line about entrapment was rough, and I have a lot of thoughts about that, like good and bad. Like, there's parts of me that loves it and parts of me that hates it. There's a lot in their relationship that happens in the second part that, like, again, I will discuss in depth in many other videos, but also my Paul and relationship analysis for season 3 particularly. But overall, like, I think they addressed a lot of things that I really didn't think they were going to, so I was pleasantly surprised. And then by the end, it does feel like it makes sense where they kind of end up, that they are, happy, that they're in love, that he's accepted this part of her, that he went back and read all those letters and he kind of put 2 and 2 together. And I just, my mind, I'm so sorry to make this about me, but my mind, because the way that I was just so right, like, I just couldn't believe, actually, the way that I was so right about things, because, like, if you watch my Colin analysis, I have already written my Colin character analysis and recorded a lot of it before part 2 came out. I was trying to get it out, but it didn't end up happening. But the way that they just confirmed, like, everything that I had been saying or thinking about their relationship, their dynamics, Colin as a character, his insecurity, his feeling like he needs to do something to earn or to prove that he's worthy of love, all of that type of stuff. Like, I just was so spot on, and I was really happy to see them acknowledging it, and for it to be, it made a lot of sense to me. It was very in character. I think that overall, like, for a general audience, they addressed a lot of it pretty succinctly and in a way that, like, would make sense to people, where it's like, oh, okay, people who haven't been looking into the relationship as much would hear these lines and be like, oh, okay, that's the dynamic, that's what he feels, like, that's what's going on. I didn't mind at all the scene where she was like, I need you to love me, because she wasn't asking him or begging him to love her. She knows that he loves her. She's saying, stand by me. Support me, help me through this, like, help me navigate this. I just need you to, like, be holding my hand while I do it. And I wasn't upset at all about her being the one to do the whole Lady Whistledown reveal on her own either. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think it's probably a little bit more empowering. I think it aligns with everything. I think it's a lot more effective for Penelope's character growth and arc for her to admit her wrongdoings in front of everybody and to give explanations into why she was the way that she was, and, you know, declarations about wanting to do better in the future. I just, there's so much to talk about with their relationship and them as characters, but I really think that both of them, like, I could have done with a little bit more of Colin character fleshing out, but I was glad that they included him being a writer. I was glad that they did all those kind of, like, back and forth issues that they have with each other, fighting, betrayals, you know, things like that. I was glad with a lot of the kind of summary that they gave for their relationship and their relationship dynamic. I loved his speech at the end where he's talking about, you know, if my only purpose in life is to love a woman as great as you, I'll be very fulfilled indeed, because that's literally what I was saying. Like, oh, it's not even funny that I'm like, did I write this? There's so many, I think I said aloud many times, I was like, did I write this? This is me. I wrote this, because what are you talking about? I've literally written this, and I have proof. Like, I have proof from these videos that I wrote before this season came out. I was pretty satisfied, aside from them not, like, I would have liked more time to have more of a reconciliation, and then to see more of them being happy without the Whistledown secret lingering. I would have really liked to see more of that, which again could have been fixed by longer episodes or more episodes, but, you know, beggars can't be choosers. I get that they do a lot of, like, wrapping up. I felt like this, and I also felt like Queen Charlotte's reaction to Pen made more sense. And it didn't feel quite as, it felt a lot better than the book, because the book, like, didn't feel that realistic. It was like, oh, okay, we have 2 pages to wrap this up, so everyone's actually fine with it, and everyone applauds, and, like, it's fine. This felt like a much more realistic and nuanced approach to, like, her explaining this and the secret getting revealed, and then her, like, continuing to whistle down, but maybe, you know, a little bit different with her own identity. The queen understanding and maybe admiring her a little bit for that, but then also, like, keeping her in check, and then everybody realizing that they do kind of love Lady Whistledown, and they all love to gossip, and what would they be without it? Like, I just felt like it was a lot more well-rounded way to wrap all these storylines up that made a lot more sense and felt less, like, scapegoaty. Like, it felt like I was like, oh, okay, they addressed it rather than, like, let's sweep everything under the rug, and now let's just say, and even season 2, you know, like, they had the queen at the very last moment be like, they make a beautiful couple, everybody be okay with this, like, which felt, I was like, okay, sure, it just felt like a very, like, easy, you know, way for them to be like, it's all fine now, it's all fine because I said it was fine, because actually this whole issue that has been taking place this entire season, that has kept y'all apart, actually could be fixed in one sentence by one person, in the last 5 minutes of the show, you know what I mean? I'm like, okay, this felt a little bit more layered and, like, complex than that, which I liked, and it made sense to me. And I just would have liked to see more of them post him knowing, being happy. That's my, like, biggest complaint, I guess. Or my biggest, the thing that I feel was the biggest missed opportunity. But I guess you could argue that then that's what other seasons are for, but who knows how much they're going to be in it. I mean, they're probably going to be in it more than Canthony because they are the favorites. I mean, it's just so, I mean, can't even debate that. But yeah, I just thought it overall was a really good adaptation. It did a lot of justice to a lot of different storylines and a lot of different characters in ways that I really did not expect them to be able to, like, stick the landing on. And I feel like it might not have been perfect in all these ways. It could have been better in a lot of ways. It could have done more of this, that, and the other. But, like, overall, when you're thinking about all the different storylines and characters and character arcs that they're juggling, like, I think they did a pretty good job wrapping everything up in a way that made sense and was satisfying for everybody. I have so much more to say about Colin and Penelope individually and their scenes and their relationship. I am going to do, like, you know, Yap sessions, recaps for each of these I will be making literally a million more videos. But these are just like my first thoughts. I'm sorry to everyone who hated it. I kind of lived. I kind of loved it. I was kind of like, I was very impressed, honestly. Like, I feel like it's a feat that they pulled off a lot of this type of thing, because it felt like they had written themselves into a corner, but they were able to really kind of like stick the landing on a lot of things that I really didn't think they were going to be able to. So I was really pleasantly surprised. Also, me going in with like zero expectations probably helped, to be honest. But yeah, what did you think of part 2? Let me know your thoughts down below. Do you agree with me, disagree with me? What type of videos do you want to see from me in the future? What are you looking forward to seeing? Give me your thoughts down below, and I will see you very soon for yet another Bridgerton video.